The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I saw a pale horse.
The beast.
We're told in the book of Revelation.
This is not a human child.
Isn't an angel?
Satan.
Armageddon is almost upon us.
Order the use of nuclear weapons.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for.
From one end of the world to the other, I will oppose you.
They're here.
Welcome to the end of the world.
Wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. This is P.I.D. Radio.
From the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, welcome to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek-Gilbert.
I'm Sharon-Gilbert. Welcome to our humble bunker, everybody. I'm going to sit here and snack on grapes. My blood sugar crashed during the Gilbert House Fellowship recording this morning. Well, it was early afternoon by the time we got to it. iMac had to update. It said, look, I'm old, I'm crabby, leave me alone, and I'm going to download all of this stuff and make you guys wait for 2 hours.
I'm going to pretend like I'm Windows 10 and just update when you're not...
Force you into doing things.
Right, so it took an hour and a half to update to the most recent, which means it's going to take another couple hours now because it is rendered Final Cut Pro useless. Until I upgrade Final
Cut.
Because now I need an update to Final Cut Pro. So Final Cut will work.
Yeah,
so that's another 5 gig download. Anyway, but you don't need to hear about that. Welcome. Thank you for listening.
We're crabby and we want to complain about it. We're old and crabby. But anyway, I've got my grapes here. So if you hear grapes,
grapes in the background, it's the grapes of snack, not wrath.
Or
grapes
math.
Of snack.
I'll count them and it'll be the grapes of math.
Well, there's a lot to be crabby about if we were to let ourselves get into that frame of mind, just looking around at the world. And, hey, look, this is the same as it ever was. The world has been in a mess since the garden. So, that doesn't mean we just kind of sit back and accept it and just say, oh, well, and pretend that nothing is wrong. But on the other hand, just remember, we're given a spirit of a peace that passes all understanding. And we are not given a spirit of fear as Christians. So
that is so true.
Let's, as we go through some of these things and work up a little righteous anger. Let's not let it consume us to the point, because this is something we've talked about this before. When conspiracy theorists at places like Godlike Productions or Above Top Secret go down a rabbit trail and get all angry about, can you believe what, fill in the blank of secret society or government agency is doing? If they don't have that peace that passes all understanding, to say, God told the Old Testament prophets, and the Apostle Paul reminded us of this, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. There's a day coming when all this is going to be made right. It may not happen in our time scale, which for us humans is really frustrating because we get, 70, 80 years. If we're blessed, we may get 100, 120 max, maybe, but we want it to happen right now. Dang, damn it.
We want a smackdown.
Exactly. But God's saying, hold on. My ways are not your ways.
Exactly.
And where were you when I laid the foundations of the universe, Job? So so we just need to be patient and trust that he's got all this under control when we're looking at this stuff. Now, that, like I said, doesn't mean we ignore it, pretend that everything is fine or even probably fine.
No,
because we know it's not. We know that the world temporarily is in the control of these small g gods who are, to be quite blunt, psychotic mass murderers who want to kill you and everything and everyone that you love.
They are. No, we're going to take that line and we're going to go to the first topic of the day, and that is that Derek and I finally watched the Superman movies, the new ones with Henry Cavill as Superman.
A couple of them, yeah.
Yeah. The first one was Man of Steel, which was really interesting.
Kind of a reboot of the Superman story.
Yeah, we will. We'll get to that in a minute. The other one was Batman versus Superman. Dawn of Justice, which is sort of the kickoff to the Justice League movie, which just came out on DVD and streaming, and we're going to watch it on February 13th when it's available for streaming. We've already bought it at Amazon to stream. But the main reason I want to see that one is because of the plot that I read online, and we're going to dig into this here in a minute. That one is all about, well, frankly, demons invading the earth. And so the Justice League heroes have to fight against the demons who were previously on the earth, who were previously beaten back by the Olympians.
Right.
Yeah.
So
they were gods.
Exactly. So this is a reversal of actual history, because the Olympians themselves were just manifestations of the small g gods whom God Yahweh placed over the nations after the Tower of Babel incident. The 70 B'nai Elohim, sons of God, who he placed over the nations.
And there's a hint at that in the Batman versus Superman film when Lex Luthor, I always have to say it that way because that's the way it was said in the original by Ned Beatty.
Ned Beatty?
Mr. Luthor.
Yeah,
Mr. Luthor.
Right.
When Lex Luthor points to a painting that shows demons and angels fighting. And he says, that painting should be reversed. So to him, the demons are the good ones.
Right. And in fact, in Greek cosmology, according to the poet Hesiod, the daemons, which is from where we get the word demons, were the good guys.
Yeah.
They were the spirits of the heroes of the golden age, the men of renown, to use a phrase from Genesis chapter 6, who lived during the time ruled by Kronos, king of the Titans.
Well, the irony about that is that if the Olympians beat him back, so it's, what is this, friendly fire? We feel sick about it.
It's sand in our eyes is what it is.
Yes.
It's sand in our spiritual eyes.
It's a great inception,
yes,
isn't it?
It's a psyop by Satan and his minions.
It is indeed.
And that's why we're talking about this. It's great entertainment because we root for the good guys in the film, in Dawn of Justice, of course. That's Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, who appears on the scene.
Who's the daughter of Zeus.
Daughter of Zeus, so one of the Nephilim. But we, and this is the whole point of films like this, are not supposed to think about what these tropes, or who these tropes represent, really, and what the true history of those characters are.
Exactly.
Now,
that's looking behind the curtain and seeing the man there, and we're not supposed to. Yeah.
Right. But now in the first film, there are some hints as to who Superman is supposed to be.
Well,
which are pretty overt. If you know your Bible, they're pretty overt.
They are so overt.
Yeah.
He is. If you've not seen Man of Steel and you want to see, and honestly, it's one that you can watch with your kids and you can say, let's look at how you're being taught that an alien is God.
Yeah. Which is part of the ancient aliens hypothesis right now for the UFO phenomenon. It's what we are being sold by the likes of Eric Von Daniken and have been since 1970 when he published Chariots of the Gods. Man of Steel has been out for going on 5 years now, so it's not. We're probably not going to. We're so give you old. Any spoilers.
It always takes us a while to watch these films because we don't go to the movies.
Well, and frankly, I really didn't want. I liked the Christopher Reeve movie, the first one, and the second one with Ned Beatty and was it Ned Beatty and Richard Pryor together, or was it Beatty and Beatty was Gene Hackman's assistant?
Yes.
Mr. Luthor, right? Okay. I liked the first film anyway, and it wasn't. The follow-up films of Christopher Reeve were okay.
But even the first film, if you know anything about the Superman story, the legend, it's pretty obvious. His dad, Jor-El, his name, Kal-El.
Kal-El, right. And in this film, they make it more obvious, where they call him Kal, son of El.
Yes.
Well, El was the chief. Now, El is used in the Bible because it became a generic word meaning God, G-O-D, God. But it was the proper name of the chief god of the Canaanite pantheon, El, who resided on Mount Hermon with his, in his fortress of solitude, more or less, except he lived there with his consort Asherah, not to be confused with Astarte, Ishtar, Asherah, who was the mother of the gods, and the 70 B'nai Elohim, the 70 sons of God, sons of El. El Elyon was a title, an epithet of Yahweh. He was also referred to as El Shaddai, which may well mean God of the mountain, which is interesting because, again, the whole long spiritual war is for control of the Mount of Assembly.
Divine Council.
Right.
Yes.
But he revealed his name to Moses as Yahweh, Yad-He-Vav-He. We've just vocalized it as Yahweh. Is that exactly how the Hebrews pronounced it back then? I don't know.
I am.
Right. So anyway, yes, in the movie Man of Steel, he is identified as Kal, son of El, his father, Jor, son of El. And
yes, but think about it. It sounds awfully close to Kal-El.
as in Halel ben Shakar, Lightbringer. Yes.
And he crashes to Earth in a lightning-like ship.
Mm-hmm. And when humans are trying to figure out whether or not he's a good guy, because it's revealed pretty early, not like in the comics or the 1950s television series or even the Christopher Reeve series, where he just sort of appears and people think he's great. He's one of us. It's yay for Superman. Here, there's a suspicion. It's like, where'd he come from? You're an alien, aren't you? How do we know you're going to side with mankind in this thing? And he replies, I've been here for 33 years.
Exactly. He's 33 years old.
Yeah. So again, if you know your Bible, you know why that's relevant.
And his father, his adoptive father, mind you, his father played by Kevin Costner in the film.
Right.
Tells him that you have to be really careful to reveal who you are, because once they realize where you've come from, who you really are, it's going to change their paradigm.
And not necessarily in a good way.
No.
Also, like in the story of Yeshua Bar Yosef, father died young.
Yeah.
Before he reached manhood completely.
And only the mother is left, and her name isn't Mary, it's Martha.
Yeah. Which kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So, a lot of references there that, and there is the temptation in the film for Kal-El to, in the second film, the Dawn of Justice, the Batman, the one where Batman decides he's too much of a threat. In that film, it's revealed that Gotham City and Metropolis are just across the bay from one another, like different boroughs of New York City. So it's like, Brooklyn versus the Bronx or Queens or something. Anyway, Bruce Wayne decides that Superman is just too much of a threat, because the destruction of the fight between Superman and General Zod from the planet Krypton and Zod's minions basically laid waste to the city. It made 9/11 look like a firecracker that went off too soon.
Yeah.
It was like a nuclear detonation had taken place in Metropolis.
And you could see why someone watching that would think, okay, this alien doesn't understand us and we've got to take him out.
Right. If he had not come here, Zod would not have come here. Now, of course, that's, maybe Zod would have come here without, Superman to stop him. But anyway, you can understand why, because Bruce, and they set up the storylines that Bruce has got a personal stake in it. Bruce Wayne, some of his employees were killed when the building was destroyed in the fight and so forth. So he decides he's got, and so he manages to get hold of the kryptonite and goes after Superman. And then they've got to become friends. So anyway,
and at the end, Superman is dead. Sorry, big spoiler, but it was in the comic book back in the day. The big headline, Superman is killed off.
Right.
but he's not dead. It's pretty obvious.
No, he's going to be resurrected.
He's going to resurrect.
Yeah, and they'll probably make it 3 days later. I haven't seen the film. We haven't seen the film, so it'll probably, for all we know, it'll be 3 days later.
Yeah.
So this is part of a long history, though. It's just more obvious when it's on the big screen. More of us will see these films, especially now with the, since the advent of VHS, then DVD, and now streaming video, where you can basically, if you've got a Netflix subscription or Amazon Prime or Hulu, whatever, you essentially have the world's biggest video library right there at your fingertips.
And they come out more quickly than they used to.
Right.
Back in the day, you were lucky to get it on VHS within a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, the film will be out. It'll go through one big viewing cycle, summer or Christmas, and then boom, and then it's out for stream. Because now anymore, they're making more of their money on rentals, DVD sales, and Blu-ray sales, and so forth.
Yeah, they've realized the crabby Gilberts won't go to the theater.
Old people not going to the theaters anymore, but we'll sit home and we'll watch it when it comes out for streaming.
We will.
But comics for years have been spinning out stories like this.
And you and I like these movies. It isn't that we're saying these movies are just junk. It isn't that. We watch them because we find them really interesting. Honestly, the special effects, I think, are spectacular. The acting is really good most of the time. Mm-hmm. But we watch them primarily to see what our children are how they're being programmed.
Right. Going back to the 60s and 70s, the golden age of comics, I came in sort of at the tail end of that. I had older cousins who had started collecting comic books in the early 60s. And so I had a lot of early edition, mostly Marvel, not so much DC, but mostly Marvel comics. I had early editions of Thor. The first issue of Thor featured Thor versus Hercules. So you've got two, a god versus a demigod. But the X-Men and the whole Well, really, the whole concept of the superhero is about the concept of the new man, or the Ubermensch, becoming more than human 2.0. Mm-hmm. And it's the drive not only behind the transhumanist movement, which is that the old gods were just that we are the gods that we used to worship, and so now having killed off the old gods through education, we've put away those old superstitions. We now have an obligation to become them. There are those in the transhumanist movements who have said exactly that. I'm not making this up. So, and the comics have been kind of feeding or seeding this idea into the last two generations of kids here in the United States and in the West maybe, but certainly here in the United States, through the work of guys like Jack Kirby, who's renowned comic writer and artist who worked both for DC and for Marvel back in the day. Mm-hmm. And it's because of work like his that Christopher Knowles, whose name we've mentioned here a few times, wrote the book several years ago called Our Gods Wear Spandex, in which he shows how theosophical teaching and occult teachings from the 19th century have been recycled, repackaged, and resold to a new generation of consumers as comic book heroes. Mm-hmm. And that he's right.
Well, take it. Some of this is just hardly, hiding in plain sight. The Justice League bunch, mm-hmm. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, like we said, that's the daughter of Zeus. Green Lantern, the Flash, Aquaman. Aquaman is essentially Poseidon. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He's hurling a trident around.
Yeah, and some of the villains that we're going to see coming in the next film, if I understand correctly, are part of this new gods group that were created by Jack Kirby back in 1971. Mm-hmm.
What, the demons?
The demons, yeah.
Along with Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf,
who's their leader.
Right. And Steppenwolf just means wolf of the steppes. Mm-hmm. The plains of Russia and Ukraine and so mm-hmm. forth. Which is really interesting because the steppes in ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, were fearful of the steppes because that's where the Amorites lived.
So to have an animalistic creature roaming these steppes. Mm-hmm. Very spiritual.
Wolf of the steppes, yeah. And there's a lot going on with the Amorites, and I'm still digging into this for two forthcoming books, but I don't know how much of this Jack Kirby knew when he was creating these things.
He may have thought, if he knew about them, he may have thought them nothing more than just mythology, and to him, mythology was not real.
In the same way that H.P. Lovecraft, when he was writing his horror fiction and created stories like At the Mountains of Madness and Dagon, not a fish god, although he was in the Lovecraft story, mm-hmm. and Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, and then the whole Cthulhu mythos, was happy to draw on the work of H.P. Blavatsky.
Yes, oh yeah,
another H.P. Helena Petrovna. Howard Phillips Lovecraft, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. What is it with the H.P.?
I don't know. Good question.
We don't have any more H.P.s. We got an H.P. back there.
No. Yeah, I know. I've got one too. Well, I'm going to have
using those anymore.
Clearly, I'm going to have an H.P. character in the Red Wing saga.
But anyway, he would draw on their stuff for his fiction and draw on their concepts of these old gods who were now coming back to Earth to try to help us, either to help us elevate or evolve to the next level of our development, or to crush us and destroy us because we've got, we basically have infested the planet that they've come to reclaim.
Well, as in the Marvel universe, which has X-humans who have this X gene, and so they're the next step in evolution. In the DC universe, they have meta-humans. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the movie, when the end of Batman versus Superman, when they're standing at Superman's graveside, he says to Wonder Woman, "We've got to find them, mm-hmm. the other meta-humans, and because some evil's coming."
And this, it just dawned on me that since this movie is available, we probably ought to watch this afternoon. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which we haven't seen yet.
No, we've not. I think Josh saw it and liked it a lot.
Yeah,
and I loved the first one.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I thought it was great.
Again, big fan of these kind of movies. It's just that we see more in it than maybe the average viewer does.
Mm-hmm. So, but similarly, we see in the Guardians of the Galaxy film these enhanced humans or metahumans. Peter Quill, who is the son of a human woman and somebody special. It's kind of hinted by the character played by Glenn Close in the first film that Peter Quill, or Star-Lord's father, was an angel of some sort. But he had to protect these, these elements of power or whatever that were who was it? What was it? The entity that was trying to chase?
Well,
trying to collect them.
Loki. Well, it's Thanos who's trying to collect them.
That's it. Thanos. Right.
And Loki was tricked into getting one of them, and it's all about the Ultron story. So in the Marvel universe, this Thanos, whose name is very close to Thanatos, interestingly enough, which means death. Thanos is trying to collect these stones, and I think there are 6 of them.
I think that's correct.
But anyway, it was the stone of, like a controlling stone, the stone of the mind or something that Loki was managed to get. And it was inside of a scepter. And Loki thought that he was tricking everybody, and he was going to sort of trick Thanos himself. And of course, that didn't turn out for. There's a great scene where Loki is being bashed around by, Hulk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm a god.
Yeah.
Smash.
Yeah. Hulk smash. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah. So yeah, you've got an interesting. Okay, I'm looking here at Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That's the role of Peter Quill's father is played by Kurt Russell. His character.
Oh, that's right. He plays Ego the Planet.
Yes, a Celestial.
Yeah,
which is interesting because Celestial is first of all, that is a term that comes out of the Bible. Mm-hmm. Celestials is mentioned in the Bible, but it was also a term that showed up in the WikiLeaks emails released from John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chair. This was among the messages that were sent to Podesta by either the former astronaut, the late Edgar Mitchell, or one of his associates, as they were trying to convince Podesta that they really, really needed to set a meeting between Edgar Mitchell and Barack Obama while Obama was still the president. And they were describing different types of non-human entities with whom they'd been in contact. And Celestials was one of these groups. One they called extraterrestrials, and the other they called Celestials. But Celestial is a term that is mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15. Yeah. There is in another reference in, he's talking about celestial bodies versus terrestrial bodies. I'm pretty sure there's a reference, or maybe I'm confusing celestials with the glorious ones.
I don't really know.
Blaspheming against the glorious ones.
Well, there are a number of, if you're talking about the Marvel universe, there are a number of hidden human beings. There are, the Thanos that we were talking about a few minutes ago, it is 6 Infinity Stones, and I just looked it up. And there are 6 letters in his name, and the alternate names to each stone so far, and this was in 2015, are Tesseract, Ether, Orb, and Scepter, and those all contain his name. Thanos contains T, A, O, and S.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the thinking is that the other 2, at least in 2015, the other 2 missing stones were, probably H and N. So we'll see what they are, but and it may be that it's, and in fact, there's an Infinity Stone in Doctor Strange, so we need to watch that one too. Didn't you watch that one?
I did.
So what was the stone found in that?
In Doctor Strange?
Yeah. It's the Eye of Agamotto.
Oh, right. It's I think it's what gives him his power to manipulate time. Now I watched it and I was doing some reading at the same time, and so there were probably some plot points that I would not that I should have caught in some of the special effects in Doctor Strange were really good, but a lot of it was like, okay, this is just setting up an excuse for more great fight scenes. And,
yeah, some of them are like that.
Yeah, I know. Oh gosh, who played the villain? Mutz, the guy who played, Hannibal Lecter in the television series.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Danish actor. Anyway, he's always worth watching. He's really fun. But anyway, the plot, Doctor Strange thought, And
we both like Cumberbatch a lot.
Yeah. The thing about Doctor Strange was that, look, the Earth has its human or humanoid guardians to guard against physical threats, but Doctor Strange was part of a group of sorcerers who were supposed to protect against magical or supernatural threats to the planet. And so...
Mads Mikkelsen.
Okay, Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah, great actor. Very, very ominous, very menacing. And I was right, by the way, getting back to the Celestials, because it is 2 Peter 2:10. English Standard Version translates it, glorious ones. Bold and willful, they do not tremble as they blaspheme the glorious ones. But in other and Jude also mentions the glorious ones, slander glorious beings, as Jude and Peter were talking about essentially the same thing. But in the NIV, they are not afraid to heap abuse on celestial beings. Berean Study Bible, unafraid to slander angelic majesties. New American Standard uses angelic majesties. King James Bible, dignities. Holman Christian Standard Bible, glorious ones. So a variety of translations for this, but celestial beings is one of the words or phrases used to translate the original Greek in 2 Peter 2:10 and in Jude verse 8. But it is a significant, I think, that these New Agers who are promoting this ancient astronaut theory, the idea that aliens are not extraterrestrial, they're really promoting the interdimensional or extra-dimensional hypothesis now, because they realize the science just doesn't support the extraterrestrial hypothesis anymore, but they don't want to admit that maybe these are fallen angels. So they're saying,
exactly.
They've got the technology to train. But anyway, they're literally calling extraterrestrials celestials, and celestials are showing up now in the Marvel film universe.
Well, interestingly enough, also within the Marvel film universe are Inhumans, which is a TV show, if I understand it right. I remember watching the first episode and thinking, meh, I should probably go back and watch all of it. But they are genetically augmented human beings that decided, because they don't really fit in, they just went off, I think, to the moon or someplace and started up their own little, society. And Black Bolt is one of them.
Yeah, this series just began on ABC this past year. Yeah.
He's the king of Atalan.
Yeah,
sounds close to Atlantis, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, comics and the films that are being developed from these comic universes, Marvel comic universe, and they've had to split them off, because I'm finding out now as an old guy that the characters that I remember as a kid are not the same way those characters are being portrayed in the comic books today. They've transferred those characters to the cinematic world, but the comics that are being published and graphic novels that are being published, they've changed a lot. And I don't want to go there.
No, we're more about how they're being portrayed on film, because honestly, that's where the biggest bang for the buck. You're getting more people consuming those films, and young kids today who've never read the comic books and maybe know nothing about the Bible are watching this and thinking, I so want to be like that.
Yeah. And is it possible that the universe might really be this way?
Yeah.
Because we're hearing from very intelligent people from the world of, science, that there is no God, and that if there was a God, then perhaps it would just be an artificial intelligence or an alien with really, really great technology. And, the Christian world, generally speaking, isn't responding to that, isn't responding to the transhumanist movement either. Hey, if the gods were just aliens with really great tech, if we come up with really great tech, then we can be like gods too.
Well, that's the thing. In fact, I was reading the plot, and again, forgive me that, don't listen because spoilers ahead. The Justice League plot, there are these, what do they call them? Resurrection boxes or some sort of special boxes that are used by these demons. And one of them is used to bring Superman back.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find it. No, that's not it. It's the... they are called... Okay, Steppenwolf and his army of parademons once attempted to take over Earth with the combined energies of 3 mother boxes.
Okay.
So, Pandora's box on steroids.
Oh, okay. All right.
They are foiled by a unified army that included the Olympian gods, Amazons, which, shipped all their stuff to them, Atlanteans,
Good
mankind.
Thing it Prime, otherwise, sorry, can't afford the shipping.
Atlanteans, mankind, and the Green Lantern Corps. Who knew they were there? Maybe they were delivering the stuff from Amazon. I don't know. But the fact that the Olympian gods are included in this fight against parademons, like I said earlier, this is equivalent to fighting amongst yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be, except that's not how it's being presented to us, which is how the fallen twisted reality when they presented themselves to our ancestors 4,000 years ago. Hey, we are the gods who saved you from chaos, the gods who saved you after the flood.
Here's the other interesting thing is that according to the plot at Wikipedia, the death of Superman somehow triggers these mother boxes to reactivate and allow Steppenwolf to return to Earth. In other words, God is dead, so the demons get to take over.
And that was hinted at in the closing of the previous film where Lex Luthor says, the bell has been rung, God is
ding,
dead.
Ding, ding, ding.
And,
yeah.
And he's coming. He hears you. Ding, 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 ding.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it can't get more obvious than that. He actually said, God is dead.
So what do we take out of all this? As Mike Heiser said, he gave a really good presentation in Roswell last summer on science fiction as televangelism for the ancient alien mythos.
He's got
gospel.
some flack over that too.
And he has. There's, of course, secularists and people who are true believers in the UFO phenomenon are going to want to agree with that theory. I've been surprised to see some Christians, in one in particular, a Christian science fiction author, who's taken some shots at Mike for that. I mean, he's also not, this particular author, not crazy about the new movie Alien Intrusion. So I guess he's not on board with the idea that the UFO phenomenon presents a clear and present spiritual danger to the planet.
Well,
so I'm not quite sure where he's coming from.
Well, maybe he's called into a different direction. I don't know, but
that's why I'm not naming his name, because I don't want to cast any aspersions on this particular fellow.
Not at all.
I don't know where he's coming from.
Me neither. Yeah. But you and I have been called to shout out what we see in this lie. This twist on truth that goes back to the garden. Ye shall be as gods.
Right. And the thing that's we as Christians need to wake up and realize is that the Bible has all of the excitement in here that are being presented to our kids as comic books.
Yeah.
Because the gods of the ancient world are real and they're still around. They're just very, very clever at deceiving humanity, at covering their identities, appearing as things other than what they are. I mean, we read in our Bible study this week at gilberthouse.org several chapters from the book of Jeremiah 41 through, I think we got through 48, and found in there some surprising references to deities and supernatural entities in that day and age that that are kind of masked in the translations of the Bible that we have, because I don't know, maybe a bias that against seeing them as entities, because we've been taught that God is the only true God, and He is, capital G God. Yeah. But it also ignores it requires ignoring other verses, some of which we read today about God executing judgment on the gods of Egypt.
Yeah.
The whole chapter of 82 of the book of Psalms, which is God in a divine council setting, passing judgment on these these small g gods, calling them gods. You are gods, all of you, sons of the Most High. But when you read most commentaries about Psalm 82, or they'll skip over Exodus 12:12. On that night I will pass over. When they're talking about the Passover, I will execute judgment on the gods of Egypt. Most commentaries will skip that. Psalm 82 is explained away as God passing judgment on the human judges who were ruling over Israel.
Right. I think the part of the problem is that we tend to think of the word God as a proper name, capital G, God.
Right, right.
The word in the original Hebrew is Elohim, and it just means a denizen of a world we can't see. Sorry, I did it too. But we cannot see it. Therefore, it's a different realm, as Mike Heiser says. It's the unseen realm, and those who live there, just like if you live in Chicago, you're a Chicagoan. If you live in St. Louis, you might be a St. Louis, and I don't really know. But if you're from the state of Indiana, you're a Hoosier. I mean, if you, and that's what I am. So if you are from this unseen realm, you are referred to as an Elohim. Yeah. It just means where you come from.
Right. The political situation in Ireland around the time Jesus was born, they had a number of kings, but they only had one high king. In the 7th and 8th centuries, in what by then had become England, because the Angles and the Saxons and the other Germans had come over and basically pushed the Britons back. They also had a number of kings, but there was only one who was in charge of it, called the Bretwalda. So that's kind of, that's a poor analogy, but it sort of helps give you a mental image of what to pick. There were a number of gods, small g gods, but only one, Yahweh, and he is the creator, which is the key difference. He's the one who spoke everything else into existence. Now, what we're getting in the comics and what we've been getting in our movies, this message for the last 60 years is that being an enhanced human would be really great, that the gods of the old world were just aliens, and that we can defeat them through natural means. Because I'm quite sure that, as we've seen in most of the horror films that we've seen, you get a supernatural, at least horror films since about the 1970s anyway. You go back to the old Dracula. Back in the 19th century, it was the power of the Bible. Exactly, right. Yeah, the original texts on which the movies, the original Dracula was based. Jesus Christ played a clear role in that, because it was clear that these supernatural monsters like Dracula were demonic at best, and that the power of Christ, was strong enough to defeat them. Now it's like, well, let's see. We just need to come up with a way to get a silver bullet or some holy water or something. The horror fiction writers today are in a really tough spot, unless they're writing from a Christian perspective like you, because they're trying to defeat supernatural evil through natural means. Like, how does that even work? Well, the only way it works is if you assume that the supernatural, they're all on the same playing field. That there is no high God, so to speak, that there is no Yahweh, there's nothing that created them. They all are just it's aliens all the way down. And who created them? Where did they come from? No, another alien. Yeah, all the way down. Yeah. So anyway, and this idea it is propagated through these very entertaining stories. And, our kids are buying it. But we've been buying it too for far too long. And we Christians have the answers. We should be able to address these and present some rational counters to these stories. Yeah, but sadly we don't. Yeah. And honestly, if you've got the opportunity to stream or to get the DVD, or if you've got it, I don't know if your theaters are still showing any of these films. Probably not, because like I say, we're old. I highly recommend at least the Superman movies, because there's some violence, so there's some, people dying, obviously, but you see that in almost any movie anymore. A 12-year-old is exposed to more violence in film than they should be. Yeah. But take an opportunity to watch the film with your child, and then, okay, now let's talk about what it just told you. What is the plot? What are these characters? Now, how did they, what is really being taught here? And do it. It's a chance to get your child excited about the Old Testament. Right. And Jesus, and just this,
Superman, he's a great guy. He is a great guy. He's saving the earth. But what are they really saying? There's even one scene where he flies up into the air and he does the cross pose.
Exactly.
It is so obvious.
Yeah, he floats out the window and he's got his arms outstretched. And it's like, well, isn't that obvious?
Okay.
Yeah. All righty then.
Yeah, well, anyway. Well, we've kind of gone on and on about that. How long did we go on?
About 40 minutes, actually.
40 minutes?
I know.
What kind of blather is that? Couple of more stories. One of those has to do with transhumanism and tech and all the stuff that we talk about many, many times on Sci Friday. Google just started selling its Clips camera. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's been, this has been talked about for months now. And in fact, I think 2 years ago is when the first story started coming out about this brand new tech. It's an artificial intelligence that runs the camera. You just set it up in the background and it decides based on what it sees you doing with maybe you and your kids and your dog or whatever. Mm-hmm. It decides when there's the best frame, when there's something really interesting going on, and it takes the picture. It's the perfect little AI photographer in the background of your home or on your vacation. No need to worry about anything. You don't need those selfies anymore. Clips will do it for you.
And no doubt Clips is connected to the internet, so it can auto-post to your Instagram and Twitter and Facebook accounts and so forth. You know, isn't it interesting that at the World Economic Forum this week, George Soros, who I wouldn't consider a champion of individual freedom necessarily, was warning about the threat posed by social media. Twitter and Facebook and so forth.
Yeah, I'm laughing.
Yeah, it's because the left is upset now that the right has learned that, hey, we can use Twitter too.
Yeah. To
propagate memes. And now, and we've reversed the not saying
polarity.
Yeah, but the right has reversed the polarity on the term fake news. So they're kind of cheesed about that, and so now they're starting to complain. Look, what Facebook and Twitter have been able to convince us to do, Instagram and other social media sites have encouraged us humans to share more information voluntarily with the intelligence community than the NSA, CIA, DIA, FBI would ever have been able to collect. We just volunteered it all to the cloud.
Volunteered for the Matrix. We are training the artificial intelligence that will one day, want to kill us all.
Exactly. I saw one that was interesting. This was published at a site that is devoted to promoting magic, so I'm not going to put this link in the show notes, but if I can find a link to the story that doesn't go to a site that encourages people to study chaos magic, I'll consider that. But Dan Brown, the author of The Da Vinci Code and what was the other one? Lost Symbol. Mm-hmm. And then there was one before that, and I forget what the Angels and Demons was the first one of the Robert Langdon series. He is paying for a group called he's paying for documents, like 3,500 occult manuscripts that are stored in the Rittman Library in Amsterdam to be digitized.
Yeah. I see that story.
Yeah.
It's at Nerdist.
Okay.
Also a good e-reader, which is a blog.
Yeah, I found it at a site that, and they may be linking back to the original story, but the site I found it at is one that has got all kinds of ads for people to study the esoteric realm.
Yeah, he's buying the Corpus Hermeticum, Giordano Bruno's stuff.
Mm-hmm. So he's made about a €300 donation to the Rittman Library and what they call the Biblioteca Philosophica Hermetica. Mm-hmm. House of Living Books, and this will allow them to digitize thousands of texts from before the year 1900 in alchemy, astrology, magic, and theosophy, and then put them online and make them available free for anyone who wants to read them, download them, and attempt to use them. Yay! So this is the world in which we live. Now, having said that, you should know that there are plenty of texts out there for Bible study available for free. So, this is a two-way street. This is a war for turf. The enemy's trying to take that same tool and make its propaganda and its manuscripts available free for its faithful, just as the Bible is available for you to study and become, better trained for this spiritual war. Because really, this is what this is all about.
Well, apparently, I hadn't even realized this because, honestly, I don't read Dan Brown stuff very much. Haven't in years. I think Angels and Demons was the last one I read. He just released in December of last year, released a book called Origin, which, well, looks at those very questions.
Mm-hmm.
Where did we come from? Where are we going?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the latest novel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And it's a similar thing. Similar format, somebody has something and there's somebody, some crime committed, some mysterious painting or document disappears and Robert Langdon has to be called in to solve the puzzle.
It works for him as
shakes the very foundation of humanity history.
Well, honestly, that's one reason I write fiction, because there's an awful lot of fiction out there that is what was attributing power to the fallen that they shouldn't be allowed to have.
Right. When his Lost Symbol came out a few years ago, people thought, "Oh, this is going to blow the lid off the Freemasons." No, it was a love letter. Yeah, it was a love letter to the Freemasons and to the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which takes us back to Edgar Mitchell, co-founder, sixth man on the moon, the one who tried to get a meeting with President Obama to tell him about the good intentions of the Celestials. I want to share 0-point energy and all kinds of other neat stuff with us. This is a tactic, whether it's through movies, comic books, or just fiction, and that's why Dan Brown writes the way he does, to promote a particular worldview. Dan Brown is promoting a worldview, a Gnostic worldview, and he gets a lot of people who, for whatever reason, have not been taught the exciting information that's in the Bible, which is based on history, to buy into it. There are people in our family, intelligent people, who've asked, hey, is there anything to this idea that maybe Jesus didn't die and married Mary Magdalene and went off to, the whole Merovingian conspiracy? Yeah,
but that's okay. Start with that question.
Start with that question and go from there. Yeah, don't mock and say, what, are you stupid? No, people tend not to
love it when people ask those questions.
Exactly.
It's an opportunity to share the truth, but it's when the people are getting their answers elsewhere. And that's where the church is letting them down.
Right, and the fact that the question comes up with people who are intelligent is just an eye-opener, should be an eye-opener for us, because it's not like these people are uneducated or incapable of understanding the concepts. It's just they've never been taught these concepts, or the way that these concepts have been taught has been so drained of the...
Very, very dry. Way too many churches present the gospel and the Old Testament truths in a very dry manner. And it's sort of a Reader's Digest version of it. So you're not getting the full depth of what's there. So you're not prepared when a concept comes along, or a teacher at college or whatever and says, well, that Bible, there's just full of lies. And it was all put together by, this guy back in the 3rd century. And
Moses made all of this stuff up in order to exert power, set up the patriarchy. And this is why I've come to believe that most people who think the Bible is boring have probably been taught that most of the characters in it are imaginary.
Or they've never read it.
And that goes from generation to generation. If mom and dad haven't read it, what are the odds the kids are going to pick it up?
Right.
Yeah, it takes a special kind of person to do that. I mean, statistically speaking, if, especially for you men out there listening, if dad is not actively involved, not just actively involved in a church just to say, hey, I'm on the council and all that, but you're actively living out your faith and showing your children why it is important to you. The odds are that by the time they're 18, they will leave the church and never come back. It's like 80%. They will never, ever come back. That's how much influence you have on your child's future, not just in this life, but for eternity.
Amen to that. And it's another reason that we often say during our Bible study that if you want to really impact your kids, read the Bible out loud with them.
Yeah. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
Because I get a lot more out of it that way.
So do I.
You catch so much stuff and just say, hey, stop. Here, look at this. Oh, wow. Was that in there before?
I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I think Mandela changed it and it wasn't there before.
Strike that from the record. Strike that reference to Mandela from the record. God's word is the same today, yesterday. He did.
No, we joke about that because it does not change. It's just that
absolutely not.
Most of us, when we read the word, and even those people who faithfully read it every year, you read it to yourself, and oftentimes, and I'm preaching to myself here, it's quota driven.
Yeah.
I got to read 10 chapters today.
I'm trying to read the Bible in a year, so I know I've got to get 5 chapters done tonight. Okay, begets. Well, I can skip over those. That's not as kind of boring.
Yeah, I know what it says.
But when you start digging into things like, we'll use this example again, last week, Habakkuk chapter 3. Whoa! And today in Jeremiah 40, I made the notes here, 43
46?
and Jeremiah 46, where there are references in there to a number of entities that I didn't know were in there. For one, plague being one, the destroyer, which is another. Like
that one really is exciting.
Well,
oh yeah.
The word used isn't Abaddon, but is that the same destroyer?
And that's exactly what I was thinking this morning, but my blood sugar was crashing so badly at that point.
Well, the thing is, I went and I was doing more reading in the Dictionary of Deities and Demons about that entry for destroyer. And they say, well, yeah, this relates to the Babylonian god Nergal, god of the underworld, which was identified as the Canaanite deity Resheph. Well, yeah, Resheph was identified in a number of texts on the island of Cyprus by the Greeks as the Greek god Apollo. They have the same characteristics, identified as an archer, spread plague with his arrows, and held the keys to the netherworld. Yeah. Revelation 9, Apollo, king of the, those in the abyss. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
But he's probably in a movie, by Marvel somewhere.
No, well, I'm sure most of the gods and demons from the ancient Near East show up in either the Marvel universe or the DC universe or both. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure. I'll bet. I'm going to look here. Abaddon Comics. Graphic novel based loosely on Sartre's No Excerpt. No.
What?
Yeah, there we go. Abaddon character. Book of Revelation, Angel of the Bottomless Pit. Shows up in 6 appearances in a series from DC called The Demon. Yeah. There you go. So you can pick just about any one of these ancient Near Eastern gods and you'll find them misrepresented, probably, in a comic book somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
But again, because comic books, frankly, are dying on the vine. So these characters and storylines that were created 50 years ago, 60 years ago, for DC and Marvel are being transferred to film. And that's why, the theme of this program is kind of how is this being used to propagandize for the spirit realm. And it's teaching us that we can defeat the spirit realm with our own power without depending on the authority and the blood of Jesus Christ, which is a lie.
Yeah.
Without him, we don't have the power in our human flesh to go up against an angel. Right.
How did Superman die? We've not really dug into that, but again, spoilers ahead, but he dies because he sacrifices himself.
Right.
He sacrifices himself and uses a spear to go after this other creature and kill it.
Right.
This creature kills him with a spear of its own to his side.
Yeah. Poked right through the side. Again, pretty obvious if you know your Bible, what's being represented there. But, and I'll say again, if you know your Bible and you look at it and read it with this divine counsel worldview in mind, that there are entities and that are referred to in Scripture that are often translated into English as destruction or destroyer or plague or pestilence or famine, travelers in Ezekiel 39, that's another one. Shades, which is based on the word Rapha, meaning Rephaim. Some places in the Bible, the word Rephaim is used as a sort of a tribal identity, but there are other places like Isaiah 14 where the word is translated shades. So there are a lot more entities recorded in the pages of the Bible that we just have not understood. And when you do get that and you see that you've got, Leviathan and Behemoth, you've got these, giant monsters, you got sorcerers, wizards, angels, demons, monsters, gods, demigods, and all of them struggling and fighting to destroy God's people so that the bloodline of Messiah would be cut off before he comes to earth. And then once he arrives on earth and he goes up Mount Hermon, which was the home of the chief god of this rebellious faction of small fallen angels, and there is transfigured into a being of light as a cosmic eye poke. Here I am. What are you going to do about it?
Uh-huh.
And
this is your place of power.
Exactly. And then he goes to Jerusalem and they think they win by killing him. And then he spends 3 days preaching to them. And that time frame is going to be very important. You'll find out why when my book comes out in August. But then he's resurrected. And as Paul writes to the church at Corinth, if they had known what was going on, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Isn't it awesome?
I know. I love it so much. And that's why when prophecy seems obscure to us, one of the reasons it may be obscure is because the Lord is keeping secrets from the fallen.
Exactly. He's called Lord of Hosts, which means Lord of Armies, over and over in the Bible. Yeah. And that's not by mistake.
Sorry, this is stamped. Not you don't need to know this. Yes. Top secret.
Exactly. Well, if you want to bring some stories that do convey this sense of the actions of the spirit realm and how that is behind what we read in the Bible, we recommend the novels of Brian Godawa, Godawa, and that's his website, Godawa, Godawa.com.
Yeah.
And look for his books called The Chronicles of the Nephilim. He's got a series now that are that have been kind of revised a bit for young adults. Because the original novels don't get really overt with the sexuality and the violence, but he does convey that these entities who rebelled against God are just utterly depraved.
Yeah.
And so some of those things, if you've got a reader who's, say, 10 or 12, may be inappropriate. By the time they're 14, 15, it's probably okay.
Because they're getting it elsewhere anyway.
Yeah. But if you look for the young adult versions of the Chronicles of the Nephilim, then I think you're getting some great stuff. And he's got 7 novels in that series, plus a book called When Giants Were Upon the Earth, which is the theological research, the biblical research that supports the stories that he's told.
Yeah.
And he covers from the time of Enoch, which is before Noah, all the way through the time of Jesus. And yes, there were giants in the land even in Jesus' day.
Exactly. And getting back to not understanding everything in Bible prophecy, we don't agree with everything prophetically with Brian. We love him like a brother. He is a brother. We're not always going to. That happens. That happens. Yeah. We've got lots of brothers and sisters that we don't agree with 100%. Many of you listening probably don't agree with us 100%. That's fine.
But we're going to travel to Israel with Brian and his wife, and we'll get to smack him around while we're there. So he'll come
and that's
around.
The main reason for it.
Yes.
That's why we're going to Israel in the first place. No, seriously. Honestly, if they didn't get everything, if the fallen who know the Bible better than you and I, better than probably any human on earth, if they didn't get the Lord's first advent and figure it all out, then what are the odds that you and I are going to be able to figure out everything about his second advent? So honestly, iron has got to sharpen iron, and we've got to leave room for different interpretations of most of the stuff. The basic things, there are a few core doctrines that we will not budge on. Virgin birth, death and resurrection,
sinless life.
Some, but beyond that, especially when you get into prophecy, there are many, many questions that don't have clear-cut answers.
Right. And let's not divide over those.
No, let's not.
Yeah. Well, that is, that's taken us just about to an hour.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, we're surrounded by propaganda, but humanity has been since the beginning of time. We just need to use our God-given discernment, and maybe that's what Jesus meant when he said, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your mind.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll put a link to the Chronicles of the Nephilim for young adults in the show notes, and there are 8 of them, by the way. Noah, Enoch.
Lots of good stuff to read.
Yeah. Just some great, and he's an award-winning Hollywood scriptwriter. So when he writes fiction, he writes in a very visual style. You can see the action taking place in your head.
Yep, so, you can. Great.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Well, coming up, what do we got coming up? We got the Dallas Conference, March 22nd through the 25th.
Yeah, and you can still register for that. You can get $20 off the registration if you use Gilbert20, Gilbert20 as your promo code. And if you can't make it, you can always stream it. Or if you can make it and you want to stream it for your family or your pastor, it's only $49, and you can get almost $10 off that, 20% off that by using the same promo code, Gilbert20.
Yeah. And the place to sign up for the Hear the Watchman conference is hearthewatchmen.com. That's hearthewatchmen.com. Still a couple of slots left for the Israel tour, the Year 70 tour of Israel. Links will be at the website, pid-radio.com. Dr. Michael Heiser going along with us too.
Oh, I know. It's going to be so much fun. And by
Heiser's
the
going to
way,
be smacking us around.
He is. He is still going to mop the floor with us. So just, be ready for that. By the way, September is the Branson Conference. We had it last year, and everybody just went on and on. It was so awesome at the Mansion Theater in Branson, Missouri. Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, so many big presenters. You presented last year, and the DVD set.
You present this year.
Yeah, I get to. The DVD set is available, by the way.
Yes.
If you want to get that, and Derek will link to the place where you can order that online. But sign up for that conference right now.
It's
if you think you're going to go, because, it's sold out like that last year.
3,000 seats. And
once they're gone, they're gone. The fire marshals will not let another person in that building.
Right. It's a great place to see a conference, too, because everything's in one room and the seats are set up. Well, it's a theater in Branson where many country and western acts come to play.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year the Oak Ridge Boys were there the week after we were there.
Winona plays there.
Right. So
it's a great place to go.
Yeah. So it'll be a wonderful gathering, and we hope that you can make it there. There will be streaming again, I believe, as there was this past year, but they haven't announced that yet. But if you think you might want to go, don't wait, because there are some folks who waited until September this past year, and then we're trying to scramble. Can you do me a favor and get us in? It's like, not unless we want the fire marshal to shut it down.
Yeah,
we can't, can't.
The great thing about Branson, Missouri, too, is that it's a family town, and if you want to bring your family, a lot of people brought their families
and stayed for a couple extra days.
Yeah.
Right? So, you'll find. I'll find a link to that in the show notes, pid-radio.com. That's going to be a fantastic year. We've got a really exciting year coming up this year. God willing, we just pray for us to stay healthy, pray for us to stay focused, because, there's a lot coming, and we just want to be able to do the best that we can in everything that God's put in front of us.
Amen to that. By the way, those of you living on the East Coast, we can't tell you details yet, but we will tell you that we will be at a conference in October in the Gettysburg, Pennsylvania area.
Yeah.
So more on that when we have a website where you can actually go and register.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Looking forward to that, but also looking forward to seeing Gettysburg.
Oh,
yeah,
me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, again, thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. PID Radio is a production of Gilbert House Ministries. The opening theme is adapted from The Alchemist's Tower by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. The closing theme is New Day Coming by Steve Grace, stevegrace.com. Our website is pidradio.com, where you'll find the show notes, links to our personal websites, our books, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and links to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The content of this program is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. For more information, see creativecommons.org.
Gonna step up to the microphone, say it loud and clear. A better day is coming soon to get us out of here.